So does chemical farming impact the environment? You will be surprised that the impact is really widespread and quite huge. So if we look back at the history of this whole chemical farming industry and how these chemicals, agrochemicals came into our day-to-day life, I don't know, it may be a surprise to you that it may come as a surprise to you that before World War II, all farming across the world was organic by default. What happened during the World War, at the end of the World War II, is that they had set up in Germany so many of these chemical factories, for producing chemical weapons. At the end of it, suddenly they found that now the war is over and all these factories are there, this infrastructure is there, and we don't know what to do with this. Then somebody came up with this bright idea. How about using these same facilities and these chemicals that we have discovered, why don't we try it out on insects? Because let's wage a war on pests in agriculture. And that's how this whole pesticide as chemicals, synthetic chemicals, started. Again, there is a very, very curious coincidence, you want to call it. There is a connection between the companies that produce pesticides and the companies that produce pharmaceutical drugs. Many of them are the same companies. I don't want to name any of them here, but you can do a check yourself. So all these have their history, all their genesis at this World War II. So from that time, these chemicals, usage of chemicals in agriculture started and then became more and more widespread across the world. To a point that we are fast forwarding now to the 1980s. DDT, you must have heard of it. It was then one of the most widely used pesticide globally. What they found is that DDT traces are there in the penguins of Antarctica. What you have to understand is, never ever has any pesticide been applied anywhere in Antarctica or close to Antarctica. But the penguins of Antarctica, their bodies, there is DDT presence, which means that just without the help of humans itself, the entire biogeochemical cycles, that is the cycle of water, the ocean currents, the air and all that, has the potential to carry these chemicals far and wide. How far and wide? As far as Antarctica. So that was the time when people first got aware that the scale at which the impact of pesticides can be is much, much, much wider. Fast forward further. Today, we are finding that the newer generation of pesticides, there is one whole class of pesticides which are called the Neonicotinoids. They have started affecting the population of bees globally. Bee populations across the world are collapsing. They are noticing something that they call a colony, a bee colony disorder. I'm not getting the word right. That is the entire colony of the bee, bee colony is just collapsing. It's just dying out. Suddenly there is a mass collapse, all of them just die out. Important is, bees are one of the most important of pollinators that are there as far as our agriculture is concerned. Bees are not the target for the pesticide. The pesticides are being used for other chemicals. But whether we like it or not, there are non-target organisms or life forms that are getting wiped out. This bee thing is something that has become so stark because people are talking about it, it's so obvious. But less noticed is the population of birds, the populations of so many other beneficial insects like spiders, populations of frogs. It has been documented again that strange deformities in frogs have started appearing now. Frogs are extremely important pest controllers, natural pest controllers, right? Birds of prey are very important pest controllers. all these populations have started getting affected. To give you a very stark example or a case of a bird population getting affected, one of the things that they talk about in ecology is, you must have come across this in your education or schools, is this whole thing of this food chain, of this food pyramid. So as we go higher and higher in the food chain, the population of the creatures becomes smaller, and they become the higher and higher the top predators, right? So eagles are at the top of the food chain because they are the predators who are right at the top, controlling they eat other birds, or they eat snakes or other small animals. Various kinds of organisms or animals or birds are eaten by the eagles. The bald eagle, which is the I think the national bird of the US, they discovered, this is again decades ago, that the bald eagle population started crashing suddenly. They found that there are fewer and fewer bald eagles being found. When they tried to kind of dig back and find why is the bald eagle population crashing, they found a very, very strange phenomenon. What did they find? This bald eagle, when it lays its eggs, and when it goes, this incubation that it does, it goes and sits on the eggs and keeps it warm for a prolonged period of time. When it goes and sits on the egg, just the body weight of this bald eagle is crushing the eggs. Now this is something that has never ever happened in the evolutionary history of the bald eagle. But now the eggs are getting crushed, and therefore new birds are not being born. And they try to trace back on why is it that the eggs are getting crushed. What they found is that the DDT that is present, again it was DDT, the DDT what they found is that the DDT that ended up in the body of the bald eagle resulted in thinner eggshells being formed. The calcium deposit became lower, the eggshells were thinner, and when the bird sat on it, it got crushed. Now, is the bird eating the DDT? Obviously not. Where is the DDT being applied? It's being applied on crops, right? So that means it's again passed up the food chain, right from the crop. It's gone from the crop that is applied to the insects or the small birds that have been eating the crops to the next level creatures, and finally it's ended up in the bald eagle. So there is a phenomenon that happens which is called biomagnification. Now what happens is, as you go higher and higher in the food chain, the concentration of these toxic chemicals starts increasing and keeps increasing. And therefore, the creatures that are highest in the food chain get the highest concentration of the toxic chemicals. And that is the reason why this bald eagle population started getting affected, because the bald eagle body is accumulating large quantities, it's showing up in the eggs. Similarly, it has been noted that there have been extensive deaths of predators like owls, which are again, known pest controllers. Frogs, again pest controllers, they are all getting affected because they are higher up in the food chain. So, to sum up, the point that I am making is this: the impact of pesticides on environment is widespread, it is quite well documented, but unfortunately not many people know about it, and because it's the environment, it's like, who cares? I am only concerned about my body, my health, right? Beyond that I don't care. Now the interesting part that you should understand is this: human beings are also the topmost creatures on the food chain. So if biomagnification is happening with the birds, with the eagles, with all these creatures, the same biomagnification will also happen with us. So it means we will also be concentrating large quantities of these toxic chemicals in our body. So the next time you wonder, should I eat organic or not eat organic, please think over this.